Sarah Chen wiped down the polished counter of her Seattle restaurant for the third time that morning, a habit born from equal parts nervousness and pride. The gleaming surface reflected the warm glow of paper lanterns hanging above, their light dancing across the fusion of modern and traditional decor that made earthly delights unique. After 5 years of saving and planning, her dream of combining global cuisines had finally become reality just 3 weeks ago. The morning sun streamed through the front windows, casting prismatic patterns across the empty tables. Sarah paused her cleaning to adjust a vase of fresh flowers, positioning them perfectly between a signed photo of her grandmother's first restaurant in Beijing and her father's cherished pasta maker from his culinary school days in Italy. The blend of cultural elements wasn't just decoration, it was her family's story told through food and memories. A soft chime from the door sensor drew her attention, but when she looked up, no one had entered. Instead, a peculiar shimmer hung in the air just above the host station. Sarah blinked, wondering if she needed more sleep, but the shimmer persisted. It began to take shape, forming into what appeared to be a piece of paper, if paper could exist in multiple dimensions at once. The document, for lack of a better word, unfolded itself in ways that made Sarah's eyes water. Portions of it seemed to occupy the same space simultaneously, while other sections extended into directions she couldn't quite comprehend. The text, written in an elegant script that shifted between various alien alphabets, somehow remained perfectly readable. Notice of Administrative Review. Galactic Standards and Practices Division. Department of Culinary Affairs. Subcommittee on Cross-Cultural Gastronomy. Form X72490. Temporal version 3.14159. Sarah reached out to touch the notice, and a small appendix unfurled from its corner, displaying a holographic message. Please ensure all appendages are properly sterilized according to Section 47.3 of the Contact Protocols before interacting with official documentation. She withdrew her hand, trying to process what she was seeing. The document continued to expand, revealing more sections and subsections. Each paragraph seemed to reference 12 others, creating a maze of interconnected regulations that made her old restaurant licensing paperwork look like a children's menu. One section caught her eye. It has come to the attention of the Galactic Culinary Standards Board that establishment Earthly Delights, Sector 7, Planet 3, Local Star Sol, has initiated unauthorized fusion of multiple planetary culinary traditions without obtaining the requisite permissions, permits, and dimensional stamps. Sarah's heart raced. The implications slowly sank in. Earth wasn't alone in the universe, and apparently it had bureaucrats. The notice shimmered again, producing a list of required documentation that scrolled endlessly downward, including such items as pre-approval for cross-cultural flavor harmonics and temporal impact assessment for traditional recipe modifications. Just as she was beginning to wonder if this was an elaborate prank, a small crystalline cube materialized beside the notice. It projected a deadline counter showing, response required, 47 standard galactic days, Earth equivalent, 3 days, 7 hours, 23 minutes. The consequences for non-compliance were listed in a spectrum of colors she had never seen before. Sarah grabbed her phone to call someone. Anyone. But stopped. Who exactly does one call about an interdimensional notice of culinary code violations? The local restaurant association probably didn't have a section for this in their guidebook. The document pulsed gently, waiting for acknowledgement. Sarah took a deep breath, straightened her chef's jacket, and did what generations of restaurateurs had done before her when faced with impossible regulations. She started reading the fine print. Somewhere in this maze of multidimensional paperwork, there had to be a solution. She just hoped she could find it before her lunch rush started. The next morning, Sarah stood before an ordinary brick wall in downtown Seattle, double-checking the coordinates that had appeared at the bottom of her notice. According to the instructions, the Centaurus branch office entrance should be right here, between a coffee shop and a vintage bookstore. She glanced down at her tablet, where she had carefully organized her response documents into neat folders, each labeled according to the confusing but precise requirements. "Please state the nature of your administrative inquiry," a polite voice chimed from nowhere. Sarah jumped, nearly dropping her tablet. "I'm here about a culinary code violation." She felt ridiculous talking to a wall, but after yesterday's floating notice, this seemed almost normal. Notice number X72490. The brick wall shimmered like heat waves rising from hot pavement. A doorway materialized, its edges refusing to stay still, as if reality itself couldn't quite agree on where it should be. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped through. The interior of the Centaurus branch office defied everything she knew about architecture and physics. Staircases curved upward only to loop back underneath themselves. Corridors stretched into infinity before abruptly ending 3 steps away. Windows showed different galaxies depending on which angle you viewed them from. The ceiling, if it could be called that, seemed to be a living organizational chart that constantly rearranged itself. "Ah, you must be the Earth Restaurateur," the melodic voice called out. Sarah turned to see a being that appeared to be made entirely of translucent crystal, light refracting through their form in impossible patterns. They wore what looked like a standard office uniform, though it seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. "I'm Xlixlix, Junior Processing Clerk, Level 7, Sub-Department of Planetary Cultural Exchange." Sarah extended her hand automatically, then quickly withdrew it, remembering the sterilization protocols. Xlixlix made a sound like wind chimes laughing. "No need for concern. We've updated our contact protocols for humans. Your species' habit of physical greetings has been provisionally approved, pending review by the Committee on Interspecies Social Customs." They extended a crystalline appendage that somehow formed itself into a perfect handshake. As Xlixlix led her through the office, Sarah noticed other alien beings navigating the impossible space. Some floated on anti-gravity platforms, while others phased through walls according to what appeared to be a complex scheduling system. A group of tentacled entities was engaged in what looked like a team-building exercise, though it involved manipulating the fabric of space-time. Most species require extensive training to navigate our office layout. Xlixlix explained, their form catching the light from a nearby sun that seemed to be serving as a desk lamp. The architecture follows standard bureaucratic protocols. Each corridor's length is determined by the complexity of the paperwork being processed, and gravity adjusts according to the priority level of the documents being carried. Sarah nodded, somehow understanding the bizarre logic. It wasn't that different from knowing which line to stand in at the DMV, just with more dimensions involved. She found herself instinctively turning left when forms needed to be filed, right when approvals were required, and somehow always ending up exactly where she needed to be. Xlixlix's crystalline structure sparkled with interest. "Fascinating. You're navigating the probability matrices naturally. Most visitors spend their first day just learning how to exist in the same temporal plane as their paperwork." They arrived at a desk that seemed to be simultaneously at the beginning and end of every corridor. "Now then," Xlixlix said, producing a holographic interface, "let's review your case. I must say, your organization system is quite unusual. You've already completed the pre-filing preparation without performing any of the mandatory meditation cycles or temporal alignment rituals." Sarah blinked. "I just made some folders and labeled everything." The crystal being's light patterns shifted in what might have been amazement. "Remarkable. Perhaps there's something to this human approach after all. Shall we begin processing your appeal?" Looking around at the impossible office, Sarah smiled. Maybe she had more experience with bureaucracy than she thought. Sarah's laptop screen flickered with dozens of open tabs as she reviewed the galactic regulations in her restaurant's office. Xlixlix had granted her access to the Interstellar Public Records database, though the crystal being had seemed puzzled by her request to view it on primitive binary technology. The sheer scope of the bureaucratic challenge ahead demanded more than just her instincts. She needed experts. The first call she made was to Maya Patel, an old college friend who had become something of a legend in corporate law. Sarah found her in her downtown office, surrounded by holographic displays of ongoing cases. "Let me get this straight," Maya said, adjusting her sleek glasses as she studied the dimensional notice Sarah had brought. "You're telling me there's an entire galactic legal system that no human has ever interfaced with, and you want me to help navigate it?" Her serious expression broke into an eager grin. "I've been preparing for this my entire career." Maya's fingers flew across her keyboard, her photographic memory already cataloging every subsection and clause. "These regulations are fascinating. They're actually similar to Earth's legal systems, just operating on a much larger scale. Did you know they have a section on proper documentation etiquette that's longer than all of human written history?" The next recruit was Kenji Tanaka, whom Sarah met at a local tech cafe. He had recently made headlines for creating an AI system that automatically processed his company's paperwork so efficiently that it reduced a year's worth of work to 3 days. The system had been so effective that his supervisors had asked him to slow it down to avoid making other departments look bad. "The galactic bureaucracy runs on patterns," Kenji observed, studying the holographic projections of various forms. "Every regulation connects to others in predictable ways. It's like a massive algorithm waiting to be optimized." His eyes lit up at the challenge. "We could revolutionize their entire system." The final member of their team arrived carrying 3 different tablets and a vintage paper notebook. Dr. Eleanor Wright had spent 30 years modernizing hospital administration systems across 3 continents. She had a reputation for turning chaotic paperwork disasters into models of efficiency. "Beautiful," Eleanor whispered, examining the multidimensional structure of a galactic form. "Their entire system is built on the assumption that processing takes time, but they never considered that time itself could be processed differently." The team gathered around Sarah's restaurant's largest table, surrounded by displays, documents, and several cups of coffee, which, Sarah noted with amusement, was technically in violation of Regulation 394. Regarding non-approved consciousness-altering substances in administrative environments. "Look at this," Maya said, highlighting a section of text that hovering in the air. "Every species processes these forms according to their own biological rhythms. The crystal beings, like slicks, take 47 rotations to complete the single form because they're syncing with their natural crystallization cycles." Kenji nodded, typing rapidly. "But humans don't have those limitations. We've evolved dealing with tax seasons, permit applications, and customer service hold music. We're practically built for this." "More than that," Eleanor added, making notes in her paper notebook, which somehow seemed to help her track the digital and dimensional data better. "We've spent centuries finding ways to speed up bureaucratic processes. Every culture on Earth has contributed different methods of dealing with administrative challenges." Sarah watched her team work, each bringing their unique perspective to the challenge. Maya's legal expertise helped them understand the rules. Kenji's systematic approach found patterns they could use, and Eleanor's experience showed them how to implement changes effectively. "The galactic bureaucracy has never encountered a species like us," Maya said, a hint of excitement in her voice. "They've built this enormous complex system, but they've never had anyone look at it quite the way humans do." Sarah smiled, watching her team dive deeper into the regulations. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their physical capabilities, but in their unique ability to face overwhelming bureaucratic challenges and find a way through. The bureaucratic trials chamber resembled an infinitely large auditorium designed by someone who had only heard about architecture through interpretive dance. Massive crystal columns spiraled upward, their surfaces displaying countless scrolling regulations. The air hummed with the sound of 1,000,000 printers somehow operating in perfect harmony. Sarah and her team stood before the review panel, a collection of beings from across the galaxy. A gaseous entity that looked like a sentient aurora borealis floated in the central seat, while a hive mind of geometric shapes occupied the left, and what appeared to be a very serious-looking potted plant sat on the right. Processing Team 7249 Earth, you have requested an expedited review of your cultural fusion authorization, the gaseous entity announced, its voice sounding like shuffling papers. This process typically requires 500 standard years to complete. Do you understand the gravity of attempting to compress this timeline? Maya stepped forward, her tablet displaying a holographic presentation. Honorable reviewers, we've analyzed the complete history of expedited processing requests. According to Section 47.3, subsection Theta, any species may propose alternative processing methods if they can demonstrate equivalent thoroughness. A hive mind of shapes buzzed with interest. Your species has existed within organized civilization for less than 10,000 years. What insights could you possibly offer to a system refined over millions? Kenji activated his presentation module, causing the air around them to fill with flowing data streams. We'd like to demonstrate our method. With your permission, we'll process the standard 500-year application sequence right now. The serious potted plant rustled its leaves in what might have been amusement. Proceed. Eleanor began organizing their digital workspace while Maya pulled up relevant precedents. Sarah watched as her team moved with practiced precision, each playing their part in their carefully choreographed bureaucratic dance. First, Maya announced, "We've cross-referenced all similar approved applications from the past million years." Her fingers flew across multiple holographic keyboards. By analyzing the common approval patterns, we've identified the core requirements beneath the procedural layers. Kenji's systems activated, processing data at incredible speeds. We've developed an algorithm that can maintain perfect compliance while optimizing the workflow. Observe. The floating displays showed hundreds of forms being completed simultaneously, each one precisely following regulations while finding the most efficient path through the requirements. The gaseous entity swirled in apparent agitation. This is unprecedented. You cannot simply skip steps, Eleanor suggested, her calm voice carrying across the chamber. We're not skipping anything. We're processing everything in parallel, using what we call multitasking. It's a human specialty. The team worked seamlessly, their months of preparation paying off. Maya cited regulations faster than the hive mind could query them. Kenji's systems processed forms in perfect accordance with bureaucratic rhythms. Eleanor coordinated their efforts with the precision of someone who had spent decades wrestling with hospital paperwork. Sarah monitored their progress, providing insights from her experience with Earth's restaurant regulations. Consider it like preparing multiple dishes in a professional kitchen, she explained to the increasingly fascinated panel. Each component requires perfect timing and coordination. As the final documents fell into place, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. The team had completed the entire 500-year process in just 6 hours. The review panel sat in stunned silence. The potted plant had grown several new branches in apparent shock. The gaseous entity had condensed into a small, dense cloud of pure astonishment. Finally, the hive mind spoke. This is efficient, Sarah suggested. Revolutionary, the hive mind completed. Your species has achieved something unprecedented. You've maintained perfect compliance while completely transforming the process itself. The gaseous entity regained its normal ethereal state. We will need to review these methods in detail. This could change everything. As they left the chamber, Sarah caught Slicks waiting outside. The crystal being's surface was sparkling with excitement. You did it. Though I must admit, watching humans process paperwork is mildly terrifying. Have you considered teaching these methods to others? Sarah looked at her team, each of them grinning with the satisfaction of a job well done. Actually, she said, that gives me an idea for our next step. After their success at the bureaucratic trials, Sarah and her team found themselves navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the Centaurus branch office's lesser-known sections. Slicks led them through passages that seemed to exist between the normal office spaces, where the walls shimmered with an odd, muted quality. There are others who have been watching your progress with great interest, Slicks whispered, their crystalline form dimmed to avoid attention. The passage opened into what appeared to be a break room, though the coffee maker was brewing something that glowed in colors Sarah had never seen before. Inside, they found an assortment of beings that made the review panel look ordinary. A cloud of synthetic butterflies that formed into a vaguely humanoid shape introduced itself as the head of digital innovation from the Andromeda branch. A being made of pure mathematics, its form constantly solving equations, nodded in greeting. In the corner, a duo of sentient plant archivists were excitedly discussing something while their leaves rustled with enthusiasm. "Welcome to the Progressive Administrative Development Group," the butterfly cloud hummed. "Or as we like to call ourselves, PAID. We're a network of administrators who believe the galactic bureaucracy can be improved." Maya's eyes lit up as she scanned the room. An underground movement of efficient administrators. "How long has this been going on?" "Approximately 47,000 years, answered the mathematical being, its digits rearranging to display the exact calculation. "Though progress has been minimal. Until now." Eleanor pulled out her notebook, which drew curious looks from the gathered beings. "You're still using processed tree fibers for information storage?" The plant archivists asked, their leaves quivering with interest. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Eleanor replied with a smile. "Especially when the power goes out." Kenji was already deep in conversation with a group of energy beings who had created a miniature quantum computer out of spare office supplies. "Your methods of data organization are fascinating," he said, watching as they demonstrated their filing system that existed in multiple probability states simultaneously. "We've been studying human organizational techniques since you arrived," the butterfly cloud explained to Sarah. "Your species has developed remarkable innovations. These sticky notes, for example, the ability to temporarily attach information to physical surfaces. Brilliant." The mathematical being projected a series of calculations. "Your to-do lists alone have increased our efficiency by 23.7%. The concept of prioritizing tasks rather than completing them in standard chronological order is revolutionary." Sarah watched as her team naturally fell into teaching roles. Maya was explaining the concept of executive summaries to a group of light-based beings who had previously submitted full 1,000-page reports for every minor update. Eleanor demonstrated how simple checkboxes could replace the traditional 17-stage verification process. "But our most interesting discovery," Slicks added, their crystal form brightening with excitement, "is your species' ability to improvise within regulatory frameworks. You somehow find ways to maintain perfect compliance while completely redefining the standard processes." The butterfly cloud reformed into a conference table setup. "We would like to propose an exchange of knowledge. We can teach you the deeper mysteries of galactic administration, and you can help us understand these human innovations. Like our queuing system optimization," one of the plant archivists suggested. "We've spent millennia perfecting it. And we'd love to learn more about this water cooler chat concept," added the mathematical being. "The idea of informal information exchange during hydration breaks is intriguing." Sarah looked at her team, seeing the same excitement in their eyes that she felt. They had come seeking approval for a restaurant, but had stumbled upon something much bigger. A chance to revolutionize the very foundation of galactic civilization. "When do we start?" she asked. The butterfly cloud shimmered with approval. "How about over one of your human coffee breaks? We've been quite curious about this ritual of productivity enhancement through caffeinated beverages." Sarah grinned. Sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest steps, or in this case, a simple cup of coffee. The entrance to the infinite archives looked deceptively simple, a plain door with a simple brass handle. But as Sarah reached for it, she noticed how the handle seemed to exist in multiple places at once, each position equally real and impossible. "Remember," Slicks cautioned, their crystalline form pulsing with concern, "the archives contain every document ever filed in the history of galactic bureaucracy. Most beings can only handle exposure to the raw data for a few minutes before their minds begin to reorganize themselves. Maya adjusted her glasses, which had begun to display measurements in several dimensional planes at once. How do the regular archivists manage it? They don't. The butterfly cloud administrator hummed from behind them. The archives sort of self-maintain. No one has successfully cataloged them in over 50,000 years. Kenji studied the readings on his tablet. Every attempt at digital organization has failed. The data exists in too many states simultaneously. Then we do this the old-fashioned way, Eleanor said, pulling out her notebook. When the others looked at her questioningly, she smiled. Sometimes you need to step back to move forward. They opened the door and stepped into infinity. The space inside defied comprehension. Shelves stretched in every direction, including several that shouldn't exist. Documents filed themselves, unfiled themselves, and existed in states of being both filed and unfiled simultaneously. Time moved differently here, with some seconds lasting hours and some hours passing in seconds. It's like the world's biggest filing cabinet, Sarah mused, watching streams of paperwork flow past like rivers. Just multidimensional. Maya's legal training kicked in as she observed the patterns. Look, the documents are organizing themselves according to some kind of natural law. Like how water flows downhill. Not exactly, Kenji said, his fingers dancing across his devices. They're organizing themselves according to relevance and relation. It's like a cosmic search engine. Eleanor had already filled several pages with observations. The system isn't chaotic. It's responding to user intent. Watch. She thought clearly about restaurant regulations, and suddenly the flows of documents around them shifted, bringing relevant files closer. Remarkable. The butterfly cloud administrator fluttered. You're interfacing with the archives directly. No species has managed that since the ancients who built this place. Sarah noticed something else. The files, they're not just moving randomly. They're creating paths. Like how I organize my kitchen during rush hour. Everything flows to where it needs to be. The team spread out, each applying their unique perspective to understanding the archives. Maya tracked regulatory changes through time, watching how simple rules evolved into complex systems. Kenji mapped the underlying patterns, finding logic in the apparent chaos. Eleanor documented everything, her simple notebook somehow perfectly suited for recording impossible observations. Here, Maya called out suddenly. Her voice echoed in ways that suggested it was traveling through time as well as space. I found something about the original system design. They gathered around a document that seemed to exist in all times at once. It showed the fundamental principles upon which the entire galactic bureaucracy was built. Look at this, Kenji pointed to a section that shifted between multiple languages. The system was designed to be adaptive. It was never meant to become this rigid. Eleanor made rapid notes. The original architects wanted administration to evolve with each new species that joined the galaxy. Somewhere along the way, that purpose was lost. Sarah watched the endless flow of documents around them, seeing them with new eyes. It's not just about following rules. It's about making the rules work for everyone. The butterfly cloud administrator's wings flickered with excitement. This could change everything. But extracting this information. They paused meaningfully. Won't be easy. Sarah finished, but she was smiling. Good thing we humans have some experience with difficult paperwork. Together, they began the careful process of documenting their discoveries, while around them, the infinite archives hummed with possibility. For the first time in millennia, its endless shelves of regulations and forms seemed less like a burden and more like an opportunity. The Centaurus branch office's central atrium had transformed over the past few weeks. Where once there were endless queues of beings waiting for form processing, now there were small groups engaged in what Sarah's team had dubbed efficiency workshops. The change had started small, like ripples in a cosmic pond. And this, Maya explained to a group of energy beings who sparkled with interest, is what we call a digital signature. It eliminates the need for physical presence during the 17 stages of document crystallization. She demonstrated on her tablet, and the beings pulsed with amazement as the document was authenticated instantly. Nearby, Kenji sat with a cluster of geometric entities, showing them how to streamline their probability calculations. By processing multiple scenarios simultaneously, you can maintain accuracy while reducing processing time by 84%. The entities shifted through various shapes of astonishment. "But what about the sacred rhythms of bureaucratic procedure?" asked a concerned crystalline being, their facets reflecting uncertainty. Eleanor looked up from her notebook, where she was teaching a group of plant archivists about indexing systems. "Think of it as enhancing the rhythm, not breaking it. Like adding harmony to a song." Sarah watched from her temporary office, a space that somehow existed in every department simultaneously, thanks to some creative application of spatial regulations her team had discovered. The changes were spreading faster than she had expected. Species that had been processing forms the same way for millennia were discovering new possibilities. Flick-Slicks materialized next to her desk, their crystal form practically glowing with excitement. "The Beta Centaurid branch has adopted your email system. They've reduced communication lag from 3 centuries to 3 minutes." They paused, adding proudly, "I sent my first email today. It only took me 4 attempts to press send, instead of performing the traditional 7-hour certification dance." The butterfly cloud administrator fluttered in through a window that technically didn't exist in normal space. "Reports are coming in from across the galaxy. The Andromeda branch has implemented a help desk system. The Carina Nebula offices are experimenting with scheduled breaks. And the Orion sector," they shimmered with what might have been laughter, "has discovered casual Fridays." Sarah's team gathered for their daily meeting, which they held in a comfortable break room they had created by filing the right forms in exactly the wrong order. The walls displayed real-time updates from various galactic sectors, showing the spread of their administrative innovations. "Look at this," Kenji said, pulling up a holographic chart. "Efficiency rates are increasing exponentially. Some offices are processing in hours what used to take decades." Maya nodded, scanning through updates on her tablet. "More importantly, satisfaction rates are up across all species. Turns out everyone appreciates spending less time filling out forms." "The plant archivists have started a paperless initiative," Eleanor added with a smile. "Though I think they might have slightly different motivations than Earth offices." A notification chimed. Another success story. A species of silicon-based life forms had adapted human project management techniques to their crystallization cycles, reducing form processing time by 99.9%. They had celebrated with what they called a coffee break, though their version involved basking in radiation from a nearby pulsar. "We're witnessing an administrative renaissance," the butterfly cloud administrator observed. "Species are not just adopting human methods, they're adapting them, creating new hybrid systems that work better for everyone." Sarah was about to respond when an urgent message arrived, its priority so high that it briefly existed at all points in space-time simultaneously. Her team gathered around as she opened it. "The Supreme Galactic Council," she read aloud, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "They want to see us. All of us. Including our entire network of reformed administrators." Slick-Slicks's crystal form flickered with nervous energy. "This is unprecedented. The Council never involves themselves in administrative matters directly. Unless," Maya said thoughtfully, "those matters are changing the very fabric of galactic civilization." Sarah looked at her team, then at the displays showing their work spreading across the stars. "Well," she said with a smile, "I guess it's time to show them our presentation skills." The Supreme Galactic Council chamber existed in a space between spaces, its architecture suggesting infinite wisdom through impossible geometry. The chamber's walls rippled with living light, and the air itself seemed to hum with the weight of countless civilizations' combined knowledge. Sarah and her team stood before the gathered council members, their presentation ready. The council members themselves were beings of pure bureaucratic energy, their forms shaped by eons of administrative power. They appeared as intricate patterns of light and shadow, each movement sending ripples through the fabric of regulatory spacetime. We have observed the changes spreading through our administrative systems. The first speaker's voice resonated through multiple dimensions. This is unprecedented in 7 million years of galactic governance. Sarah stepped forward, her confidence growing from months of dealing with impossible situations. Behind her, Maya prepared their evidence, Kenji monitored their presentation systems, and Eleanor held her trusty notebook, ready to document this historic moment. Honorable Council, Sarah began, we came here seeking approval for a simple restaurant, but we found something more important, the true purpose of galactic administration. The presentation unfolded around them in 4 dimensions, showing the results of their work. Holographic displays demonstrated efficiency improvements across thousands of worlds. Time-lapse data revealed how their innovations had spread naturally, adopted and adapted by species across the galaxy. The original system was designed to evolve. Maya explained, highlighting passages from the ancient documents they had discovered. It was meant to grow stronger with each new perspective added to it. Kenji's data streams show the elegant patterns emerging from their changes. We didn't break the system. We helped it remember how to adapt. The council stirred, their energy patterns shifting in complex ways. But what of tradition? Asked the second speaker. What of the ancient ways? Eleanor smiled and opened her notebook. We've preserved everything valuable, she said, displaying their careful documentation. We've simply found ways to make it more accessible to everyone. The Butterfly Cloud Administrator floated forward with other members of their network. Look at what has already changed. They hummed, their wings creating displays of successful implementations across the galaxy. Slicks, now promoted to Senior Innovation Coordinator, demonstrated how their own crystal species had adapted human methods to their natural crystallization cycles. We maintain our traditions while embracing new efficiencies. The council members conferred in frequencies beyond normal spacetime. The chamber thrummed with potential energy as they reached their decision. The first speaker's form brightened. In all our existence, we have never seen such profound yet harmonious change. You have not merely improved our systems, you have reminded us of their original purpose. Therefore, the second speaker added, we not only approve your restaurant's cultural fusion license, but we are creating a new division, the Department of Administrative Innovation and Cultural Integration. The announcement rippled through the chamber. Sarah felt her team's excitement matching her own. They had done more than solve their original problem. They had opened new possibilities for the entire galaxy. And the first speaker continued, their form shifting with what might have been amusement. We would like to make your establishment the official testing ground for new cross-cultural administrative procedures. Sarah grinned. You mean my restaurant will be both a place for fusion cuisine and a center for bureaucratic innovation? Indeed, the council chorused. For what better way to bring cultures together than through food and efficiently processed paperwork? The chamber filled with the equivalent of applause from 1,000 different species. Sarah looked at her team. At Maya's proud smile, Kenji's quiet satisfaction, Eleanor's careful documentation of the moment, and all their alien allies who had helped make this possible. Well, she said, I guess we should celebrate. Anyone up for coffee and interdimensional pastries? I know just the place. As they left the chamber, Sarah realized that sometimes the biggest adventures begin with the smallest things, like a simple restaurant license application and the human tendency to find better ways to fill out forms.